welcome Monica Williams. Welcome again. Monica Williams is the SVP at NBCU Universal and also Senior Operations and Product Executive. She's a multicultural leader, as you will hear today, and a DEI champion. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Anne Marie Burton. I'm the Chief of Strategy and Programs at NAMIC. I am thrilled to be having this conversation with Monica, walking her through her journey and learning what we can get from her. For those of you who've been to our webinars before, and if you're new, welcome. This is a highly interactive conversation, right? We do this so that you can glean from our leaders, our next generation leaders. You can ask questions. So this is really a conversation with all of you. If you have any questions, have any comments, I see the chat feature is already running. I want you to put your questions in the Q&A part of the menu. If you put it in the Q&A, I'll be able to see it and I can ask Monica your questions. If you just want to say, well done, yay, then awesome, put that in the chat and we'll be monitoring that too. But please put all your questions in the Q&A tab. So Monica, let's get started. I was really inspired by your nomination, and then having gotten to know you and just reading and learning about your journey has been amazing. As a person who's traveled broadly, I was really excited to have this conversation with you because I think there's some gems that we can bring to this conversation that may not be otherwise available depending on who I'm talking to any given day. So given what we know about you, given that you're a first generation, immigrant who's been very successful in your career so far, why don't you share a bit about your personal journey, your background, and how it plays into your role and your leadership journey?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. It's an honor, and I'm so excited to be here. And it's really fun to see that we have folks, kind of tune in from all over the country, and also friends. Hi, Lardy. But yes, I will sort of jump in. So I think as Anne Marie you mentioned, and I sort of showed in my video, my personal story. I thought I shared a little bit of my personal story and kind of sort of how it lays in, but. I was born and raised in China and an only child due to the only child policy at the time. My parents are both doctors in China, and this part is relevant because I was supposed to be one too, and clearly I'm not. And so as a first generation immigrant, I came to the States when I was about the age of 10, and I did not know any English. So it certainly was not an easy adjustment, and really had to learn my way around here on my own, starting with just, sort of how to communicate. And I don't have any siblings. So my parents didn't go through the school system here. So really, I was kind of on my own trying to figure out, everything and going through the school system and sort of the education and so forth and so forth. So I think all of this really kind of allowed me to learn that like the early independence, the resourcefulness, creativity, and courage, I truly believe that I carried into my adulthood and career. And I, going back to, because I didn't go to med school, I kind of rebelled under sort of, I think, how my parents have defined it at the time, that I got my undergrad in industrial operations engineering in Michigan versus go to med school. And I was recruited from college by GE. GE was, the company to be at the time during that time. And I joined GE Aviation in their prestigious leadership development program. And really, I think that also played a huge role of who I am and sort of what it brought to me and in my sort of skill set. But that really appreciate that classical GE leadership and business training, because I essentially had 4 different jobs in 2 years and really going through different functions of the business, from technical sales to global sourcing. And, sort of the part of the leadership development program was you're really supposed to assess, learn, implement, and move on and never really get too comfortable. You're just going to move on to the next role. And this is also, not to date myself, but the days before navigation and smartphones were around. So not only I had to learn quickly about the business and the organization and, sort of everything around the work, I had to also figure out my way around a new city every 6 months. So I think that also that experience, gave me, allowed me to also live in places and meet people that I would otherwise never been exposed to. So it was certainly a very grown experience, both personally and professionally. And I would say, out of that, I was also able to really hone in my ability to adapt, learn about resilience, and really learn to how to connect with people that are, very different and lived in different places and had very different experience than what I had. So I really appreciate, that part of the sort of the kind of the experience I had really allowed me to really see things through different lens. And I guess I'll kind of continue on my career journey through that. But an experience that probably is unique for me is that technically never left the company. So for those of you who don't know, GE owned NBC Universal before Comcast did. So I transitioned to NBCU under GE ownership. And this was sort of at the beginning of digital, and have stayed with digital ever since. So I think, for me, that the ability to make connections internally, moving around through various parts of the country, worked in different departments to gain skills, and really taken advantage of various opportunities as they came about, and at times certainly raising my hand and not afraid to ask questions, and not afraid to dive in. Well,
Excellent. I mean, honestly, being around 22, 23 and having to navigate the workplace and all that travel, I have a feeling that that was not only resilient but very daring and bold of you. I'm looking at all the spaces you had to travel, and I'm like, wow. I don't know. At 23, I was a traveler, but I wasn't that brave. So good for you, Monica. So I'm gonna jump into your role as SVP, especially at NBC, doing content distribution. You oversee various aspects of content delivery and digital experiences. Can you share some of your accomplishments and the innovations that you've led in this space?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I always say, having been an OMLP where I was used to sort of taking a new role every 6 months, and then, past that, rotated in certainty, few roles, maybe every couple of years. But this has certainly been the longest role I've held in that, really, in the distribution space. And it's been so fun. It's such a fun journey. I'm really proud of the, seeing and watching and being part of the industry as it evolves. From, I think, the things that I'm really proud of as View, but a lot of this is really following where the viewers are going, right? Following, the technology in this space. So launching TV everywhere, be able to monetize, the early days of set-top box video on demand, be able to monetize all of our clips content across all these different digital platforms. Launching, with all the virtual MVPDs, and most recently, be able to, kind of, I think we're entering the FAST space, and we're building and launching our FAST portfolio across the various distribution outlets. So that's been a huge one that I'm, certainly very proud of in my career journey here in my current role. And then I would say another one is, when the Tokyo Olympics was announced, and this is during, sort of the pandemic, where we had a 1-year postponement. We really took the time to think about what can we do to go big, having that extra year. So we did, and we came together, worked together, and we developed some new experiences with our distribution partners. And we also created and launched this Olympics app that was recognized for a couple industry awards. So really proud of that. And then I think last but not least, the amazing team that I have, and I took a part in building, and the culture that we're all sort of built together on this. I think it's, certainly one thing that I'm, very proud of in my, kind of my career.
Excellent. Now, it is no secret that this industry is evolving and changing so rapidly, right? So how do you balance the need for innovation with the operational demands, given just this swift pace on consumer behavior and the demands on the output of that? How do you balance that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, especially in the distribution product space, we really, at the end of the day, we have a hyper focus on the consumer and our end viewer. But we have to think through, through the lens of our customer, which in our case is really our distribution partners and platforms. So it's really that B2B2C model that we're, kind of every day. This is how we think about an anchor in every single problem statement. Let's hyper focus on the user, but then how do we take that and think through the lens of our kind of our distribution partners. So what can we do to unburden our partners in creating a better experience for that end viewer, for that end user? That's ultimately what fuels our thinking, day in, day out, and ultimately balance the work and executing on the business need, but while innovating. So we're always thinking about ways of what could we do better in the way that we work. So from a process standpoint, looking at the tools that we can use or new experiences we can build.
Interesting. So let me build on that and say, can you share with us a memorable moment in your career when you felt particularly empowered as a woman, and what lessons did you draw from that experience?
I think there are quite a few, but I would say the one that really stands out for me, and it's a special one, I would say probably is, during the global pandemic. I remember, I certainly have regular team meetings to make sure that we are we never stop connecting, and we're, even though we were all remote, it was really our way to stay connected, even though we're not in the same place together. So this is again, I think we're just, everybody is experiencing the challenges and all of the emotions that comes with that global lockdown and the time of social injustice and everything that was going on around us. I remember, we really took the time to talk, to share, as a team, and had some real moments during those meetings, and the conversations we had. It gives me chills to think about it now, but it was so raw and real. And the notes that I got from the team after, and I think about that, and it just, I think that really stands out for me. That I just never felt prouder as a woman leader and the impact that I had on the team, from, just really one meeting during those times. So, and I think a lot of that was, because I was being authentic, not afraid to be real, and really showing a compassion and empathy, and having raw conversation with the team.
I like that. I have a question. So I'm just and this is kind of really in touching with your experience and being that hyper focused on the consumer. Christian asks a really good question. How would you collect and analyze feedback from end users to account for their experience during product design?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's part of, the whether it's through focus groups or research studies, that's always, I mean, that's part of our product development cycle, right? So we always have to listen to, seeing what works, what doesn't work. I mean, we're also, it's a little bit, say, easier in the content side. I mean, we're all viewers, we're all users, so we can also draw it into our personal experience to really think about, our journey of what we have to go through in terms of finding content, watching content, and then how do we pull that into our day-to-day. So it's a combination, I think, linking or, sort of leveraging our own personal as a viewer, but also, obviously all those sort of research and focus groups, as part of our product development cycle.
Awesome. I have a question from Tiffany, who's asking, what is the best way to balance work and life?
Ooh, that's a that's a good one. I'm not sure I have the secret sauce or, the magic key to that. I think it's, I think the biggest one is you starting with giving yourself grace. In that I'm not sure it's always the perfect balance, to be honest. And I think this is, again, like a real conversation and a totally Monica Williams, point of view. But, there are days, and I struggle with this. I have, I think on the personal side, I have 3 school age kids and fur babies. And so there's just, there's a lot of what I have to deal with as a working mom and as a working professional and, a baseball mom and a soccer mom and all the things that we sort of deal with. So there are days, I think, that I feel like, oh, I'm doing so great and focus and work and really, really kicking ass, and was maybe not the best parent today because I was, traveling or dealing with all the things here. And then there are days where I'm like, oh, I was such a great parent, but I felt like I didn't spend as much time as I should have here. So I think number one, going back to just giving yourself grace, that it's not a perfect balance, but as long as, I think going back to, we're all professionals and we do the best in the state that we can. And just making sure that, there's sometimes I now know that being that I have my sort of non-negotiables and I have my, times where, like after a certain time, I have to be there for my kids' baseball game. I'm not missing that. And that's my non-negotiable. So I have to do everything around it that ensure that work stuff is not falling apart and I'm able to still execute and deliver, but I'm protecting this part. So is it a perfect balance? It's not, right? But I think we would be kidding ourselves to say, oh, we can always balance this 100% so perfectly. I just don't think that's possible. So it's just giving yourself grace that it's not going to be a perfect balance, but you do the best that you can. And it's kind of that, integration between your work life and your personal life. Well,
yeah, I really like your response, Monica. And if I may add, I think anytime someone speaks of balance, I think of those scales of justice, right? And there's always this idea that they have to be in perfect alignment. And that's really not true life, depending on what phase of life you're in, especially most of the times as a woman, right? And so my approach to that is creating work-life harmony, right? Where things are in harmony with each other. And harmony does not equate to balance. It just equates to an ecosystem where everything is working together, right? And I am at the center of it, and sometimes my kids are at the center of it, and sometimes something else is pulling that center, but it's not disruptive to the ecosystem that we are creating as a family or that we're hoping to achieve, right? So not so much work-life balance, but more strive for harmony in creating that balance in everything you do. And every given day, I love that you talked about your non-negotiables. Everybody should have their non-negotiables, whatever you perceive those things to be. And because when you look back in life, it is those non-negotiables that will be the measure of your success, in so many ways. So just wanted to add that to amplify that question that I think we get so often. And I'm going to say, like, as moms and as, wives and females in the workplace, we get this question of balance so much because, I think it's there's a lot always riding on our shoulders. But thank you for your response. And I love the non-negotiables. Everybody should have them. You do not have to be a parent to have them. Those are just key markers that everybody should create.
And I love, Emery, just to add to that too, like I love your comment about it depending on sort of which, life, your phase in life, right? That changes too. So there are times where, going back to, and again, it's giving yourself grace where, if you're at a point in your life, like where you may not be able to take on more, that's okay. Like, so I think all of this is, it really has to think about, how do you create that harmony with everything that's going on in your life in the sort of the phase in life that you're in, because that changes. I mean, that's always, that's a constant change as well. So
absolutely. Before everybody got on, we were all bantering about some various phases that we're in and going, what does that look like? So yeah, so give yourself grace because you don't always get it, right? So let's see. I have one more question and then we're gonna kind of move into leadership. So Yana, thank you. Is it Ayana asked, how do you approach new product direction when your PMs are pitching new ideas for the business?
I mean, I think, this is, you have to really think about, I mean, there's always a lot of new ideas, but going back to, in a perfect world, we could do and execute and develop all the new ideas, all at the same time. But the truth is that there's always limited resources and time and, some of the constraints that we have to balance. So it is about prioritization. You really have to get pretty deep into, well, what is the impact of a certain feature or, what you're trying to do and how does ultimately roll in and translate into the business value. I think you have to, kind of really create the right measurement to be able to help you define and measure. And that's sort of how we think about it. Then you have to prioritize accordingly based on that. Cause, again, in a perfect world, all good ideas we should be able to execute, but it is really about how do you sort of prioritize the timeline of how you, roll those ideas out.
Fantastic. Pete, thank you. Good question. Oh, I just love all the questions that are coming in. You guys really understood the assignment. This is a dialogue and I love it. So Pete, you asked, as an independent channel with Xfinity in Minnesota, Twin Cities, how should we partner to increase viewer experiences?
So you are, I guess, help me understand the role a little bit. You're a channel. Is that right?
Independent, let me read it again. So they're an independent channel with Xfinity and they're based in Minnesota, the Twin Cities. So how should they partner to increase viewer experiences?
From viewer experience, I mean, I think, look, we're all in the place of, this goes back to a little bit of, my other talk that I pretty bullish around in how do we ultimately make things easier for the viewer to discover content. And I think a lot of this is, as an industry, we have all worked to very hard to make your own content stand out and make your platforms and services stand out. But I do think that it's time to, how do we come together and work together and really bring down some of the walled gardens and really going back to, kind of the advocacy around the end viewer. How do we painfully get into the end viewers, sort of mindset, and how do we help them to really discover content and create that seamless experience, on whatever platform that they're watching. And I'm not sure that's the best answer, but, maybe starting point of, I do think that there's a partnership that really needs to happen, or a deepened partnership, I should say, between, programmers, but publishers and distributors, and sort of and really thinking about from a consumer standpoint and how to work together even further than that we have today. Well,
fantastic, Pete. Hopefully that answered your question, but feel free to keep asking. We're happy to revisit this if we need to delve deeper. So I am going to now start asking about your leadership. Let's transition in terms of leadership. And leadership is a word that's really thrown around quite a bit. So I'm curious, knowing your journey, to see how we tackle this. So you've had diverse career experiences, right? In leading roles in Six Sigma, operation management, leadership in the digital media, right? How have these different experiences influenced your approach to leadership and problem solving, right? So tell us more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard, honestly, for me to break it all apart, because to me, I see them as all building blocks of me. And I think everyone, kind of based on their personal and professional experiences, that's why we're all beautifully unique, because that's, kind of what makes us, us, right? So I think, so it goes back to all of my experiences, both personal and professional. I see them as the building blocks of me, and they're so integrated as part of who I am. And it's part of, it's, sort of how I show up in how I think and how I approach a problem and how I, approach people situation. Do I sit down when there's a problem? Okay, let me think about DMAIC, which is a Six Sigma, process. Like, I don't do that. But the way I think is really, let's make sure that we're defining the problem. What are we trying to achieve? Let's make sure that we have our baseline of, what are we trying to improve to? So I think, again, going back to just, it's all part of who I am. And I think that's just how I show up.
Awesome. Thank you. So let's talk about career challenges. Every time, I've always said, when I get the opportunity to meet individuals who are really successful, I learned something along the way in terms of what questions I need to ask, because everybody will typically want to say, how did you get there? And my desire is to know, what mountains did you have to jump over and leap over to get to where you did? Because for everybody who's at the top, there are enough scars along the way that got them there, right? So when you think of your journey, let's talk about the challenges. Do you have any specific examples of a challenge or challenges that you faced as a woman, and how you are able to overcome them and achieve your goals?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I'm probably, to the point of it's not always gravy, right? There's certainly a lot of challenges along the way. I think the one specific one that I'll never forget, and sort of, and I guess in a way I was fortunate that this happened pretty early in my career, to kind of gave me the learning from that, because so I'll say, this is, I mentioned I was on a leadership rotation program. This is probably my second or third, again, so early 20s. It was a floor supervisor, production supervisor position in Wilmington, North Carolina. I was managing the people sort of I had, multiple shifts that I had to manage. And there were people who, worked there 2 or 3 times longer than I've been alive at the time. in an area that, you know, again, sort of just that probably, again, without the role, I probably would have never been exposed to. The, you know, some of them never left the county, and hang out with firehouses. So again, just a very different, you know, way of life, you know, at the time. So I, you know, going back to as an Asian American female, trying to lead that team to get them to, you know, work and make sure that we're beating our production goals as part of, you know, this is a sort of manufacturing role. You know, every day you have your numbers you have to hit in terms of the parts and how sort of it fits into the global supply chain. And ensure that we're meeting all the safety standards, which is very important in the you know, manufacturing space. It was not easy in the beginning, you know, and I would say, you know, most of them just flat out did not listen, or not even that. I mean, they were, I think, purposely giving me a hard time. But, you know, and I, you know, going back to the challenges, it was hard. It wasn't easy. And I'm not going to lie, there may have been tears. Me and you know, go into the restroom. But I didn't give up. I, you know, kind of one by one, I was able to get to know each person on every shift I was managing, and find a way to connect and share with them what we were trying to accomplish and how I really needed each and every one of their help to achieve, and how by working together as a team, it would ultimately help all of us, you know, in sort of the overall goal that we're trying to accomplish. So from there, you know, like I ended up, I guess, you know, connecting to every person, and we were then beating our goal every single time. And when I was leaving, the team gave me, and I think I probably still have it somewhere in my office, but they made me this custom made award that it was like a clock. I really do have to find it because it's such a special memory for me, that it says the best supervisor that they've ever had. So that was, you know, again, challenging, but it's a way I overcame. But I just, you know, I think what I learned from that is be true to myself, be authentic, you know, trust trust your expertise, and don't give up, man. Because, you know, if I would have given up and thrown the towel and thinking that, oh, this is 6 months, I'm only here for 6 months, who cares? Let me just kind of get through the 6 months. But I didn't, right? Like I was in it, and I made sure that I was spending the time to you know, overcome the sort of the obstacle at the time. So.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It kind of reminds me of this saying. I think you've had it too. People don't care how much you know until they know that you care, right? And so that ability to connect with people in a way that shows them that you care and you know them can really turn around situations. And as a leader, I think that is such an important lesson to learn it early, and to understand that people will follow you over the hill if they know that you care, if they know that you understand, right? And a lot of times, that to me is a huge distinction between leaders that succeed and those that end up just having the hammer and the nail, you know, kind of leadership approach. So thank you for sharing that story. I think that can be very challenging. Environment, culture, I feel like it was a melting pot. It was a combustion of so many things that could have happened or gone so very wrong. Actually, I do have a good question here that piggybacks on that. Dania is asking, you have an impressive career, you know, with your path in from the GE pipeline to NBC. Can you share the role that advocacy has played in your career trajectory? She can say either mentorship or sponsorship, right? And I love this question because I was going to use that to build on this experience, right? You're young, you're in this environment, you're having those tearful moments. What role did advocacy, or if at all, play in that space of your career or further down your journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I think going back to number one, I always say, like, you're the CEO of your own, of you, right? Like of your own career path. So I did learn that, you know, certainly I've had great mentors and advocates that in part of my career, and in part of my career I didn't. So then I had to really learn that you have to again, it's, kind of, you're the CEO, you're in charge, and how do you sort of leverage your network and to help you in certain situations. And going back to mentorship, and it is important. And having a network, it doesn't necessarily have to be a mentorship. And I think I was involved in all of the whether it's ERGs or meeting people outside of your normal day-to-day. I think that all plays a role in just, I'm not necessarily the best networker, but I think organic networking works really well for me, meaning that sort of working or huddling around something that I believe in or passionate about, and then ultimately you meet people as part of that, and that you never know sort of how it could play into your overall journey. And that has happened for me, I think, just kind of organically through my career. So hopefully that answers the question.
So I have a question from Pete that says, who was a role model for you, and how has women leadership, is it female leadership in the industry changed? Yeah. Let me ask that again. Who has been a role model for you? That was one. And then how has female leadership in the industry changed? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, role model for me is it's always my mom. That's an easy one. Just because she was a doctor, as I mentioned, and also raised me, and I think during a very different time. So I always I don't even know how she used to do everything. Sort of raising me and growing up, and also adjusting to a completely new country. Sort of later in life. So she's always my number one, and who I sort of look up to. In terms of sort of changes in sort of the woman, I mean, it's so refreshing and nice to see there's certainly more women leadership now compared to what I think when I entered the workforce, and the sort of the style of that. I mean, again, going back to, I had I think early in my career exposed to good leaders, and especially through the leadership program, and I was able to work through so many different business units, functions, and you really get to sort of get exposed to different leadership styles in an early age. And I think I was fortunate to see that, because I had been exposed to great leaders and ones that are not so great, and really kind of for me is helped me kind of keyed into the type of leader I want to be. And I do see that there's a shift in that, because maybe in the because there were so few female leader, in the leadership position, I would say 20, 30 years ago, and just a very different, mindset or leadership style. I'd say that now I think we're certainly, it's more of a working together, and how do we help each other? So I do see that shift, and it's been so refreshing.
Fantastic. Let's talk about leadership and building high performance teams, right? So what are the strategies that you employ to foster collaboration and innovation within your teams?
So I am a big believer that leadership and culture are two sides of the same coin. And I really do believe our job as leaders to create the best culture first and foremost. And I think, I think that's so important to really have the best performance output. I got my MBA from the Drucker School of Management, and Peter Drucker, one of his sort of famous quote is, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I would probably add to that any day and all day. So having the right culture is something that I spend a lot of time on, focusing on, a family-like culture, because think about it, like, what would you do for your family? You go out of your way to help each other no matter what, and you're there for each other no matter what. So that's really how I approach it. And then, so that's part one, is sort of, spending time around like cultivating a great culture. And the second part is, really making sure that, especially in, kind of a more product technology side of the, functional role, for every, level of the organization, and, for every person, like, break down the work and how they contribute to the overall goal. Because every part of the work and every person on the team and the organization matters, and everyone is necessary in really achieving that. So, but sometimes it's when you're, sort of little bit, sort of on the junior side, and you're not necessarily understanding how this all connects, but like really spend the time to break that down and help them understand. I think that really helps to really motivate and draw down. Okay, well, if I'm doing this, like, okay, they can't do that without me doing the work I'm doing here, even though it may seem very mundane to a person at the time, right? So I think that's important. And then last but not least, for me, it's we all get comfortable with change and the uncomfortable, and as scary as it could be, but it helps us to come up with opportunities to think about things differently and do things differently, and and I think most of the time we challenge ourselves to think differently and do things differently for the better, right? To make things a little bit easier. So I think those are probably the core principles for me.
Really like the idea that you give everybody their value proposition on the team, because that's truly what you articulated, right? From the very bottom to the very top, when people understand that algorithm of how they connect, it's a chain, it's a chain, and everybody's connected. And for us to extend the length of that chain, everybody has to kind of work together and things have to click. So I really like that. Let's talk about you being here today, because you are a NAMIC Next Generation Leader. And how has this recognition impacted your work, especially in the space of DEI?
Yeah, I mean, such an honor. So humble to receive that word. And I think it just makes me want to work even harder to be the change agent and continue the work we have in front of us in creating that more equitable, inclusive workplace. And speaking from my personal experience, and maybe it's the part of being first generation, I think I went through, and Anne-Marie, we probably talked a little bit about this before, where, I went through like a bit of identity crisis for, a long time. Like, where is home? Where do I belong? So that fuels me to, really help play a role in ensuring everyone feels that they belong, no matter where you're from, like what you do, right? And then also, I think I'm really proud of the work that my company, Comcast NBC Universal, is doing and leading in this space, and the support that we have, producing Meet the Moment, which is our all company initiative designed to engage, educate, empower employees at all levels, because there's also so much learning that we all need to continue to have. So the support that we have from the company in giving us that and those tools and resources is so amazing.
Like that. I remember us having this conversation around identity and home, and the broad nature in which at least you and I can describe home when you've lived in so many parts of the world and you've traveled greatly, and you're not really rooted in one place, but you still identify with multiple places, right? And how ironic the question of where do you come from can seem like it's such a simple question, and yet it can be
very complicated answer for me. Very complicated.
And take your time, and somebody's like, you don't know where you're from, you're like, no, it's really loaded. That's a very loaded question.
Yeah.
So I love that we have that in common. So I was really blown away with your numerous recognitions, but you've been recognized as a woman leader, but you've been named the most powerful woman in cable, right? I just want that to sink in. Most powerful woman in cable, and not once, not twice, but multiple times, right? What are the key qualities, attributes that have contributed to this success?
Yeah, I mean, I can't sit here and not recognize the amazing team and the company's support and all of my colleagues. First and foremost, for me, I guess if I were to really kind of think about it, there's just a lot of moments in my personal and professional career that have taught me humility, courage, vulnerability, compassion, empathy, and perspective. So maybe that plays a role. And I think also for me, it's just, never be too comfortable or complacent, and continue to develop new skills, new networks, and I think constantly remain curious, ask a lot of questions. I always have a lot of questions.
Were you the white kid? Do you have a white kid? but I believe in the five whys, and I think that those really help you like drill down to things. So I always encourage people to be, be the why,
Yep.
ask the five whys,
Yep. Gotta drill down. Yep.
so, to everybody, I hopefully you're enjoying this conversation. We have about another 10 minutes to go. So, if you have any questions, please ask away. Again, we want this to be as interactive as possible. I have a few more questions, and we're going to get into the rapid fire, which is always so much fun. But I cannot move on until I ask this one question. When you think about diversity and inclusion initiatives, right? We do know that there are companies that have really honed in their DNI and their measures and the way they do business around getting not just diversity from a racial or gender perspective, but even cognitive diversity, right? So I like to look at diversity in its holistic approach. And when I look at that, I look at how do you believe that diversity contributes to the success of an organization? Why is diversity an imperative for success in our industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know the stats at this point. It is just it's such an important factor, and it contributes to the success. And I think especially for our line of work, it really help us going back to it ensures and help us to really make sure that we're thinking about all of our users, every single one of them, and the different potential user journeys, and how people go through, whether it's discover content, view content. So that again, going back to, and ultimately this, you can do all the numbers, right? Like then it rolls into all of the success metrics from a business standpoint. And if you think about from an employee standpoint, the retention, I mean, it's so critical. But I think all the stats are out. There's plenty of stats out there that supports it. But I think from our side is really help us to make sure that we are thinking about every single one of our users that is representative of, so I think that's the huge part that we know that this is a huge contribution factor.
So I have like a few more minutes. So let's see. What advice would you give to young women who are aspiring to leadership roles in male-dominated industries such as technology and media?
Yeah, I would say believe in yourself. Be authentic to who you are, and don't be afraid to speak up, because I certainly went through this, sort of again early days in my career where I'm a little unsure, especially being in a technology role. I was probably not probably most of the time the only female and minority female, and looking around, it's like, oh, everybody knows so much more than me. But if I had an idea and I was maybe a little bit sort of hesitant to speak up about it, but now no. But I think going back to believe and trust in yourself and trust in your ideas, and make sure that you are speaking up, and not be afraid to let it be heard.
Awesome. So we typically teach about imposter syndrome in one of our classes, and we talk about this just not feeling like you belong. And sometimes, even when you belong, there could be a conversation, especially when you're a minority, where you could give an idea in a room and it's ignored, but somebody else says the exact same thing, and they get recognition, and it's amplified, and they're given credit for it, right? Thinking of your journey and where those instances may have happened, because I hear believe in yourself and speak up. How did you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a journey. Not gonna sugarcoat it. I think a lot of this comes with it's a journey with myself. Like, I have to make sure that I was comfortable to speak up, and I did know. And I think a lot of this, what I went through was, maybe in the early days, we're like trying to, also maybe being Asian doesn't help either, because I felt like especially at the time I look, now I appreciate it, but maybe back then I was like, I just looked like I was 16. So it's like, wait, trying to do the things of maybe wearing glasses, trying to make myself look older. But going back to, it was just, I know that I know my stuff, and I need to I had to get there with myself to know that I know my stuff. And so that was, I think there's like a personal development side that I have to, that it's a journey that you have to go through. And then, having the relationship helps. And, once you get comfortable, where like, I actually know everybody, I talk to them one-on-one and in the room, and maybe there's like 10 of you, but that's okay, because I know you. So I think all of those are at least what I had to go through to get there. And then, I think now is because having your advocates or your, kind of friends and friendlies, what we call the meeting. Some of them is, you gotta make sure that, hey, here's an idea. I want to go present this, and I need to make sure that we're kind of supporting each other. I think all of those are potential ways to help as you build the confidence. But for me, it was certainly a journey. I'm not gonna lie. It wasn't like I was born, some people are maybe naturally born with it, but I wasn't one of them. And it took some time for me to know that, okay, I do know what I'm doing. And you really do. You have to spend the time. And I'm not, also taking that away. You do have to put in the work to know, you develop your, so the subject matter expertise. But also once you have it, don't believe in yourself that you have it, and don't be shy to speak up and to share your ideas.
Outstanding. So we're going to go into our rapid fire. Ready, Monica? So this is going to be rapid. So
sure.
What's the one skill each executive should possess?
Empathy.
What's your favorite author and why? Oh, who's your favorite author?
Yeah, I'd say Brené Brown, because I think she has, she does a lot of focus on vulnerability and courage.
Love it. What's your favorite song and why?
This is a hard one. I don't really remember, artists and songs, but there's also, or the name of the songs, but I love music and I listen to all genres. So, I'd say there's, all of them. It's a hard one to list for me. Sorry.
Awesome. So do you remember a specific experience where you wished you had done something differently? If you were able to do it all over again, what would you change?
Go study abroad. Yeah.
Ooh, do you have a specific country?
It really could be anywhere. Travel is my thing, but I think I had an opportunity to study abroad in college, but I realized that in my last semester in college, and by then, if I went, the class wouldn't have count to my graduation, and I was like, oh, I just, I want to graduate. Really regret that. So that's why I'd say if I had to do it over again, whether it counted to a graduation or not, like I'm going to study abroad. So, but probably Europe. I think I would spend it and go to Europe anytime and just people watch.
I would second that. I did that. My goal was how far away can you go?
Yeah.
And I did, and I went to England, and I do not regret it because it was just such a gateway into Europe for me, and to spend so many years there. So yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. So Monica, what a delight! This has been such a great conversation. Everybody who stayed with us throughout the conversation, thank you for being here. You are an inspiration. I am excited to see you being recognized for this leadership, because I do know it's not easy. And I love that you've been very candid about the challenges. And hopefully our viewers, you've learned something. You asked some really insightful questions. It was such a pleasure to have you engage with NAMIC today. Hopefully we'll have more of this. And to everybody, thank you for joining us today. We hope this was insightful for you. Watch for our next webinar. We'll be sending out an email about that. Monica, do you have any parting words?
No, thank you for having me here, and for everyone who tuned in, and thank you for spending the hour with us. So thank you.
Look at all this love and all these emojis that you're getting. Obviously, you have a fan club. Thank you, Jerry. That's really nice of you. Thanks, everybody. At NAMIC, we endeavor to bring this program so that we can continue to sharpen your skills, keep you engaged, so you can learn from amazing leaders like Monica. We know that sometimes to get this candor across in a work environment can be challenging. So we appreciate you giving us the gift of your time, and we hope to see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.